Alright, so welcome back to Recreational Sniper. We're going to do some ammunition testing. I'm going to start with the 62 grain Hornady Black FMJs, and then we're going to go to the Frontier 68 grain Boattail Hollow Point. But right now I've got to do some zero work on the gun, so I'm going to go ahead and get it zeroed, and then we'll start getting into testing. $28.96. $28.61. $28.26. Alright, so it looks like we're running kind of in between. The lowest one was 2770 and the highest one was 2896 over the chronograph. But most of them are running about low to mid 2800. And I've already got a really nice group at 50 yards now that we got it zeroed there. I'm going to take it on out to 100 and get it zeroed at 100 and shoot for a group there, and then we'll see how small that group is, and then we'll keep going and we'll change to the 68 grain Boattail Hollow Point and then the 77 grain Boattail Hollow Point as well. I'm just going over. You got 100. Just very much. It's 2780. Shot just a little high, which is kind of expected from a 50-yard zero. So here's a look at our 50-yard group, and it's kind of hard to see because it's on this but there you go. There's 3 rounds in that one little hole there. Go ahead and lay this target down, and then we'll go out here to 100. So with these 62 grain FMJs, we're out here at 100. I was chasing this thing around quite a bit, and you could tell from me adjusting the scope and whatnot back and forth. but my last 3 shots ended up being right here. So it's still not bad. It's just that the wind is kind of switching back and forth on me, so it was kind of hard to really figure this out and get a good zero on it out here at 100, because the wind is changing directions. This is about as good as I could get it to come into out here at 100 yards, and you can kind of hear the wind. It's probably kind of loud on the recording thing, but you know, we're gusting like 15 miles an hour, and it's changing directions constantly. So now I'm going to go to the 68 grain boat tail hollow point match, and we'll see how it does. So we're going to test and shoot these Frontier cartridge. These are 68 grain boat tail hollow point match bullets. These are actually loaded with Hornady 68 grain bullets, and we're going to see how they do. I'm going to shoot 10 rounds. I'm not going to shift the vertical adjustment on them, so they may shoot a little lower than the 62 grains because they're likely going to be traveling a little slower, but we'll see what happens. I'm going to try not to chase the zero around so that we can actually see how they group. And I may have to go back and do that again with the Hornady Black. So that was 2,645 feet per second. Pulled that one. 2680. Alright guys, we're out here at the target, and this is our 10 shot group with the Frontier 68 grain boat tail hollow points. As you can see, they are actually really good. I got 3 rounds right dead center, and then I had a couple on the edge, and then the one shot that I know I pulled is this one. Know for a fact that I pulled that one. Yeah, that's our 10 shot group at 100 yards with the Frontier 68 grain boat tail hollow points. Go ahead and pull this target, and then I'm gonna move the last target over. We're gonna shoot it with the 77 grain SIG bullets and see how that goes. And then I think I'm going to come back and reshoot again with I'm going to redo a shot with the 62 grain Hornady Black, just to see, you know, now that I know I don't have to chase the zero anymore, because maybe I was chasing it because the ammunition is that inconsistent, or maybe it's because it's that affected by the wind. I'm not sure, but we're still shooting in the same wind generally, and as you can tell, they shoot way better. So let's see what happens. All right, so now we're going to check out what the Sig Sauer 77 grain OTM shoots like. It's the Elite Performance white box ammunition, and I know through some research, just about anybody can find out, but these are loaded with 77 grain Sierra Match Kings. So I'm gonna load 10 rounds up, and I'm gonna shoot 10 rounds and record the velocities on that. And we'll check out part. So here we go. Again, not adjusting the vertical on this, so if they shoot a little bit low, that's fine. Got an error on the chronograph. $27.88. $28.12. So this is the 10-shot group for the SIG ammunition, 77 grain open tip match. It looks like for whatever reason we got one that shot just abnormally higher than all the rest of them, but I think overall this group is a little tighter than the Frontier. Even though the Frontier, as cheap as it was, shot really well. And we'll talk about that in a little bit, about velocity differences, and then the cost of the ammunition, and see, we'll talk kind of on how much money you'd be willing to spend and just how valuable the accuracy is to you as a shooter. Alright guys, so I'm not gonna bore you with talking about every single velocity that we recorded. I took the first 10 shots of each round, whether with the Hornady Black, the Frontier, and the Sig Sauer, and then I just added those all together, divided them by 10, and got our average velocity. So we're going to compare the actual velocity that we got from the rifle from what the box says it's supposed to be, and we got some interesting results. So starting off with the Hornady Black 62 grain FMJ, the box states that it should be 3,100 feet per second. Our testing resulted in an average of 2,823.6 feet per second. So instead of having a supersonic range of 830 yards, which it should have if it was going 3,100, it gives us a supersonic range of 740, so about 100 yards shorter. It also produces quite a bit less muzzle energy than what it's supposed to. And so we're looking at, from the box to the actual results, we had a negative 276.4 feet per second. So that's how much slower it was running out of this gun than what the box says. Now, depending on what that company used for a test barrel, they could have been testing from a 20-inch or a 24-inch barrel, and then they probably could get 3,100 feet per second from it. On from that, we're going to look at the 68 grain boat tail hollow point match from Frontier, which is actually using Hornady bullets. Not sure about the powder and cases and primers and that sort of thing. The box says it should be running 2960 from the muzzle, and it should have a supersonic range of 1,020 yards. Our results, what I got yesterday, was an average of 2,684.2 feet per second and a supersonic range of about 890 yards. So we got a negative 275.8 feet per second. So again, they could have been using a 20-inch or 24-inch test barrel. This is a 16-inch barrel, so we are going to lose some speed. Now, the most interesting one out of the whole bunch is this Sig Sauer 77 grain OTM. The box says that it should be running 2,750 feet per second, and the ballistic calculator would say that it would have a supersonic range of 950 yards. What we got was an average of 2,789.6 feet per second. So we actually got a gain of almost 40 feet per second, 39.9 feet per second. So I'm wondering if SIG is actually using a 16-inch barrel in testing, or 16.5-inch barrel in their testing. and then just the difference in temperature could account for that 40 feet per second if we were, because yesterday was actually pretty warm. Temperature outside was about 80 degrees, so if they were testing their ammunition at like 50 degrees, yeah, it probably would run about 2750 average. Because increase in temperature increases muzzle velocity and that sort of thing, increases the burn rate of the powder. So we actually bumped up with the Sig Sauer ammunition, got a supersonic range of 960 yards, and so we gained like 10 yards there. But on from that, that really is the only one that performed basically as good or better than what the box said. We can also talk about the extreme spreads of the ammunition, which is pretty dang important for long range shooting, because it's gonna, if you got a real wide extreme spread, you're gonna have a pretty wide range of vertical dispersion on your target, or you can. So the extreme spread on the Hornady Black was 126 feet per second. So that's from the slowest round to the fastest round. They differed by 126 feet per second. On the Frontier 68 grain, we had an extreme spread of 161 feet per second. So again, that's pretty big. We'd prefer to get it down at least under 100, really ideally for match shooting and that sort of thing. You want it to be like 20 or 30 feet per second at the most. The Sig Sauer actually did the best again in this class. The extreme spread on it was only 67 feet per second, so that's really, really good. And if you want to talk muzzle energy, we could calculate out that the 62 grain produced about 1,100 foot-pounds of energy. Just over 1,100. The 68 grain Boattail Hollow Point Frontier produced just under 1,100 foot-pounds of energy, but the Sig Sauer produced 1,334 foot-pounds on average. So again, definitely putting out a little more than the other ones. So, and also when we're looking at the speed and stuff of the Sig Sauer 77 grain OTM, my goal is to load the Berger 80.5 grain full bore Boattail, hybrid bullets or whatever. And since they're pretty close in weight to those 77 grains, originally I was thinking that maybe getting 2,700 feet per second would be kind of a stretch for those out of this rifle, but seeing that the SIGs are running almost 2,800 feet per second, I think that I could easily get 2,750, or maybe even get close to that 2,800. But so we can go ahead and switch and look at the target results. So I did my initial zero with the 62 grain, and actually the target was oriented this way. So I did my typical bore sight at 50 yards and hit here, adjusted, hit there, and then adjusted and hit here, and then I shot a 4-shot little group right here, and it actually looks really nice and tight. So they shot good at 50 yards. We're talking a fingernail size group there. But when I decided to take those same rounds out to 100 yards, we started having some issues. Basically, which the target was sitting like this at 100. Basically, I would shoot and it would hit one spot, and then I would try to adjust my crosshair, hold steady and adjust up to that spot, and then I'd shoot and it would hit somewhere else. And it was not working out the way it should, and so I decided to quit chasing it a little. And every time I shot, it would move. I'd get 2 grouped there, and then I would adjust and try to get onto that spot and bring it in here, and then I'd get like 3 over here, and it was just, really inconsistent. It was like it would group a couple, and then you would adjust for it, and then they would group somewhere else. Didn't work out, but finally I did get a couple shots right here on the edge of the bullseye, and I decided to just leave it alone. I was like, okay, this is the best I'm going to get out of it. It's as close to the bullseye as I can get, so I'm just going to leave it there. And then I went from the 62 grain to the 68 grain, and this is the result on that target, and it was oriented just like this. So this is a 10 round group, and I've got a couple in the top end, and then I ended up having 4 rounds dead center, and then 4 more down here at the bottom. So it kind of double grouped on me just a little bit, but I got to thinking about it after the testing and the test shooting I was doing, and I believe the reason why I'm having this kind of double grouping thing is because of this thin barrel. And you know, this is a little technical and a little off subject, but this is a fairly cheap rifle. If you can buy the Ruger American Ranch for, you know, give or take $500 in 5.56. Sometimes you can find them a little cheaper. I think I got this one for like $450 plus tax. But the barrels, these really high mass-produced barrels, a lot of times in lower-end rifles, you know, budget-type rifles, the bore hole in the center, you know, going through the barrel from one end to the other may not be perfectly straight through the center, and you may have just a tiny, like, micro fractional amount more material on one side than the other. But what happens is when the whole barrel starts heating up, it's going to tend to bend a little more. It's going to kind of warp a little bit and shift your point of impact, or your point of zero, as it heats up, because it's not perfectly centered. Now, your higher end custom barrels, and it really doesn't matter which manufacturer you want to buy one from, they're made so good into such tight tolerances that they're, you know, the bore holes lined up so perfectly in the barrel that they really don't suffer from that problem. It's just the lower end budget type rifles and budget barrels that kind of suffer from that. The really highly mass produced ones that they produce thousands of them every day kind of deal. Those are the ones that will suffer from that, and you can start seeing some double grouping problems. So, but again, even though this Frontier ammunition did have a little, you know, even though the velocity on it was a lot lower than what it was supposed to be, and the extreme spread's actually pretty dang big at over 161 feet per second extreme spread, they actually grouped fairly decent. If I'd have slowed down and let the barrel cool down, like shot 5 rounds and then let it cool down and then shot 5 more, likely these bullets down here in the bottom would have been up in this first group. And then, you know, we're talking under an MOA, we're talking like half MOA to 3/4 MOA size group at that point, which would have been a really good result, even though they had a pretty crappy extreme spread. So, on to the last one. We're looking at the SIG 77 grain OTM target here, and this is another 10 round 10 shot group. And what was funny was, you know, most of the rounds, with the exception of these 3, those are all under 3/4 of an inch. Those are maybe right at a 1/2 inch group there. But I did get 2 that grouped off to the left there. Sorry, gotta get my bearings straight. So they grouped off to the left, and then in the middle of shooting this really nice tight group here, I got one that just went high, and I know that I didn't pull that shot. I don't know exactly what happened. It just went high, and I'm just not sure exactly what happened there. So it's kind of an interesting result to me personally. This is far more acceptable because at least 7 of the shots are within a really small spot, whereas here you only get 4 shots that are in a really small spot. And then on this target, you get no shots that are in a really small spot. They just kind of were all over the place. And I never could get those to like come in at 100 yards, those 62 grain Hornady Black. Just never could get them to group right, you know, come into a group that I could actually move the group and get it centered in the target. So for me personally, the SIG 77 grains did the best. They performed the best. They had the lowest extreme spread. They had the best grouping, I think, overall, with the exception of this one guy that just shot high. So one thing to consider, though, is the cost, the price of this ammunition, because, you know, we can talk about the pros and cons of the SIG and the pros and cons of the Frontier. Pros with the Frontier, it's cheap. For a match grade bullet, it's cheap. It's like 75 cents a round. You know, that's almost as cheap as buying 62 grain, the 62 grain M855s. You know, you can almost get this match grade Frontier ammo that cheap. Cons, doesn't live up to its potential. You know, we're over 275 feet per second short of what the box says, but again, that's just the difference in test barrel length. So yeah, you know, and then that extreme spread. But also the on the other hand, the pros of it too is that it actually groups really well. It actually shot pretty good for that price. So, you know, about $16 a box for 20 rounds of that. And this was $29 a box for 20 rounds of this. So twice as much money almost, give or take. And it just shot slightly better. It did have better velocity. So if you want to look at that, it did have a lot better velocity, and the consistency in velocity was way better. But the shooting and actual group size results are really not that much different. So it's kind of up to you. You want to run the cheaper stuff, you're going to get pretty decent results, or you can buy the expensive stuff and you're going to get just maybe slightly better results. It's up to you. But the Hornady Black for me did not work out very good. For whatever reason, it shot fine at 50 yards, but trying to get it to 100, I could not get it to pull in to a good group. That could just be this particular rifle does not like that particular bullet, because rifles are weird that way. One rifle may really, really like one type of bullet, and then the next rifle may really, really hate it. And they could be the same rifle, you know. But that's just the way it is. You just got to figure out what your gun, what your rifle, what your system setup really likes to shoot, and what it really shoots good. And so I just wanted to leave y'all with that, and we'll see you next time in the next video. Thanks for watching.